Birds fans, it's a Tuesday get together here on Birds 365, and you got Mac and Mac. John McMullen and Jody McDonald here to hang with you for the next 2 hours. Got two of our quasi-regular contributors, Scott Grayson from Fox 29 and the Darth Vader of the Eagles beat. That would be our Groats from the Delco Times. We'll see if Bob's in a good mood. Every once in a while he's in a good mood. He surprises us, comes on and has a smile on his face. We'll see if that's the case today. J-Mac, I saw a great stat number on Reuben Frank's Birds observations today that lends itself to a question about how the Eagles coaching staff works, how it's worked under Nick Sirianni, and maybe a little bit about how it's going to work this year because there was a change to the Eagles staff. Reuben came up with some running back stats that I just did not know. Coming into the season, we know who are the backs that the Eagles have as of right now, having added Rashad Penny as a free agent, trading for DeAndre Swift, each with a resume in the league, as does Kenny Gainwell, who some people thought was ready to step up and be the Eagles' number one back. And when I say number one back, along the lines of what Miles Sanders got last year, which was 71% of the Eagles running carries, not counting quarterback keeps by Jalen Hurts, but just anytime the running back ran the football, Miles Sanders had 71% of those carries. So they're going to have to come up with a replacement somehow. And we've all been wondering / debating, and I think we'll do it right up until the first game of the season, as to what the breakout's going to be. But this was an interesting group of stats that I did not realize. That DeAndre Swift, playing for the Lions, when he carried the ball, had 10 rushes or more in any game over the last 3 seasons, which turned out to be 17 Lion games where he had the ball, carried it more than 10 times. He rushed for 5 yards plus per carry. Pretty damn good. If you're at 5 yards per carry, that's pretty good. In games where he rushed it less than 10 times, 3.8 yards. So a drop off. When he carries it less. When he carries it more, the average is more. Rashad Penny, in games that he carried the rock more than 10 times, averaged 6.4 yards per carry, which is outstanding. That's off the charts good. When he carried it less than 10 times, 4.4 yards per carry, which is a pretty significant drop off from 6.4 down to 4.4. And Kenny Gainwell in his Eagle 2-year career carried it more than 10 times, 5 times, and averaged over 5 yards per carry. When he carried it less than that, he was at 3.7 yards per carry. So all three of these guys significantly better when they get 10 carries or more in a game. Guess what? You're not getting two guys getting 10 carries in any given game. So you're going to need to pick out one and try and feed him the ball at least 10 times. And that might be difficult to do, or it might be tricky to do. How do you handle it if you're the Eagles? And I will get to the question of how they actually go about discerning and deciding who that guy is. How would they best decide who should be the guy in a given week to be the guy who carries it more than anybody else?
My assumption is they'll come to a conclusion who the lead back will be. In my assumption that if he's healthy, and that's a great assumption, Rashad Penny's going to be that guy. But I mean, kind of takes care of itself. Is he healthy? Is he not healthy? And when you have a committee approach, a couple things about that I don't want to completely dismiss it, but I think it's kind of somewhat obvious in the fact that 2 things. One, if it were that simple, you just give the guy 10 carries a game, but injuries pile into it. You have 2 backs that are consistently been injured. Swift has missed, not as bad as Penny, but he's missed, 4 games a year consistently. He's played 13, 13, 13, which is kind of weird. And people used to get on Miles for missing a few games. He's been pretty consistent in missing a handful of games each year. And then when you're using a committee approach, well, who gets the ball? The guy with the hot hand. So if you're having a good game, you feed that back more, and that kind of feeds into the numbers. Well, they're having a good game, that's why they're getting the football more. Whereas if they're struggling a little bit, you go with the other guy in the committee, and maybe he's having the big game. So maybe it's, Penny and Swift are going to be on the same team. So you get the feel early. All right, who's going to be good? Who's got the hot hand, like a basketball jump shooter, and you feed him the ball that particular game. So that part of it tends to take care of itself as well. Um, Swift's an interesting case because he was, I think, the 35th overall pick in the draft. So basically, we talk about what's the difference between 32 and 35? First round pick, second round pick. So forever he's got that label of second round pick, but people don't know how close he was to being a first round pick. So my point from that perspective is Detroit was expecting him to be the guy in Detroit as the running back, and he never sees that mantle. So while I get why people are excited about him being here, coming back to Philadelphia, and rightfully so, I think he's going to be good with this quarterback and this good offensive line, but I don't think it's slam dunk. I mean, there are some concerns, why didn't he become the player who was supposed to be in Detroit? Is it just the injuries? Is it other parts of his game? And we sort of have to wait and see with that. With Penny, you kind of know he's good. It's just a matter of, can he stay healthy? Because every time he's out there, he's good. Can he stay healthy?
His numbers have been very good, as a matter of fact. But you're right; it all comes down to health. And by the way, I think people kind of forget this. Rashad Penny was a first-round pick. You mentioned that DeAndre Swift was early second, which is very close to a late first. Rashad Penny was a late first-round pick. So the expectation should have been even higher on him, even though it's probably only a couple of picks in between us when they went in their respective years. But injuries have handicapped Rashad Penny. So I agree with that. I like your line of thought that you feed it to the hot guy. If one guy's going well, it's going to be him on a given day. And so that lends itself to this question that I don't know the answer to, and you may, because you are a quote unquote Eagle reporter. You're down there all the time, have more access to the coaches and the like on and off the record. I remember when Doug Peterson was the coach here, oftentimes it would pop up that Deuce Staley would roll the backs in and out, and he would choose what backs were on the field for what sets of downs during the game and who was out there, which I always thought of as a little strange. The Duke and Deuce was a very good coach and a very well-respected coach, and Doug Peterson loved him. But the guy who's calling the plays, for me, should be the one who's really dictating what players are on the field, because he has a feel. We keep singing the praises of Shane Steichen that he's had a great feel for it the last year and change here in Philadelphia. Do you allow the coach who's putting in the player at a specific position to dictate who's going to be out there on the field, or would you rather have a hand in on exactly who's carrying the ball and why they are getting the ball on a given play? Did they do that? I don't know. It's never been commented on. Hopefully you do know as to who actually dictates who the guys are on the field if the Eagles are going to be using rotating backs, because that's surely the way that it looks going into the season.
Yeah, at the rotational positions, it is the positional coaches. You just don't have time. If you're the play caller, defensive play caller, offensive play caller, you just don't have time to do that in between the shot clock, so to speak. I mean, bang, 40 seconds, go. You can't be mucked down and moored with, all right, this is the personnel. Now you say, all right, we're in 11 personnel, we're in 12, and you call the play, and then it's up to the position coach. But that's what you do during the week. They have a big impact on it. And there's certain situations, third down, hurry up. last year. Kenny Gainwell's the guy. Maybe DeAndre, because DeAndre's a good receiver. Maybe that changes a little bit this year. But that's the kind of preparation you do during the week. All right, it's coming to halftime. We're in hurry up. Kenny Gainwell's on the field. Like, that's what the coach wants. He tells Jamal Singleton that during the week. Jamal Singleton makes sure it happens during the game. That's where the prep during the week comes into it. Defensive line as well, rotational position. That's up to Tracy Rocker and Jeremiah Washburn. Now, Jonathan Gannon, when he's here, he'll say 50 tight, 40. We're in 40 fronts. And again, during the week, all right, we're in 4-minute offense at the end of the game. You want your guys out there. Damn well Reddick better be out there. Sweat better be out there. Fletcher Cox better be out there. Brandon Graham better be out there. And that's sort of their feel during the game of, all right, we want those guys to have full gas tanks for the end of the game if you got to rush the passer. But yeah, the play caller, there's just not enough time to get bogged down, and that's up to the positional coach.
So, do you believe that the play caller calls plays specifically to match up with what the positional coach is sent out there onto the field? I get it, and you explained it well, that a lot of this is decided ahead of time during the week in preparation. If we're in this type of a situation, these are the guys we want on the field and the like. But every once in a while, it's not going to match up. What the play caller is thinking and what the assistant coach is thinking, the positional coach is thinking, put out there. Do you think that's something that we saw a lot of last year? We'll see coming up this year, that the guy who's calling the plays will actually go, all right, I was leaning toward this play, but maybe I better do this play because this is the group that we've got out there on the field right now. There's a lot of overlap there, and the coaches have to be on the same mental page. Do you think the play caller is actually changing his mind because of the guys that he's got out there on the field that's sent out by the positional coach?
No, I don't think he can do that. Especially, the only place where it would come into effect would be, if AJ was off the field for some reason, or Devontae was off the field for some reason. Other than that, I mean, no, you got to roll. You got to roll. And you mentioned Miles touched it so much last year. They know the situation, right? I mean, Shane Steichen knows if they're in hurry up, so he knows who's going to be on the field. It's going to be Kenny Gainwell. It's not going to be Miles Sanders. So even if you want, you might be more apt to call a swing pass for Kenny Gainwell than Miles Sanders, but the Eagles don't use that much anyway because of the quarterback. Tight end, that's more of a, is Dallas Goedert available? Because if Dallas Goedert's available, he's going to be out there. Now, he missed 5 games, and you had to go with Jack Stoll and Grant Calcaterra, and they shipped things out a little bit because they didn't have that impact. But that's during the week stuff. Same thing. Is Hassan Reddick available? Luckily, we talked about the health of this team. Luckily, he's available. Maybe if you don't have your fastball, so to speak, on 3rd and 13, you got to do things a little bit differently. But I think that's sort of baked into the understanding that if Hassan's out there, Hassan's out there. And if he isn't, it's probably injury. You're well aware of it, or he's out for the game. It's not like it's going to take the play caller. Now it's going to be Sean Desai by surprise. Now, if for some reason, Jeremiah Washburn would say, "Oh no, sit this one out, Hassan Reddick." Yeah, he might get in some trouble, but he's not going to do that. So, kind of takes care of itself.
Right, and you laid it out well for me. Thank you for that. There are some plays that are easy. It's 3rd and 13. You know what type of lineup you want out there because the play you're going to run is obvious to both sides. You know what you're going to run. The defense knows you're going to run. You just have to out execute them. When it's 3rd and 1, you got a pretty damn good idea which way they're going to go with the best sneak quarterback in the National Football League. But there's a whole bunch of gray areas there. 2nd and 5, where you basically have the choice of whatever you want to call there and have faith that if you don't get anything, you can get it on third down and the like. That's where the relationship, the mind meld has to go between the positional coach and the individual who's calling the plays, because you may see something. If you're the play caller and you look up and you see who the defense is sending onto the field, you see their quick substitution right after your substitution, you go, wow, this would be a great play for a screen pass. Uh-oh. We don't have our screen pass team out there. We don't have our flip. Kenny Gainwell standing on the sidelines. Then you're whispering on your breath, damn, all right, maybe I got to call something else. I think that may actually happen more than one would think. You think that it is, hey, your play is your play call and you adjust on the fly. I would not be surprised if the adjust on the fly is playing to the players that they have out there. And it's basically with the Eagles, it comes down to either 11 or who the running back is, because the quarterback's the same, the two-star wide receivers the same, the star tight end's the same, and your offensive line never changes. So what it comes down to is what running back is out there, and do you have two tight ends or three wide receivers? That's the only real variation for the Eagles as far as positional decisions go, right?
Yeah, offensively, yeah. I mean, offensive line, as you mentioned.
I'm thinking offense here. You're looking at both sides of the ball,
Yeah.
and you should. Good on you. Shame on me for not. But I'm basically looking at the offensive side of the ball when I'm asking these questions.
I mean, basically, offensively, the only rotational positions are, running back and if you're going to toggle between a third receiver and a second tight end. I mean, that's basically it. The Eagles use a lot of. And this is one of the limitations of, some of the statistics, like, you'll hear me say the Eagles were the number one team in rushing when they were in 11 personnel, which is true. I mean, factually, that's true. But so many times when they're in 11 personnel, they're in empty sets, right? Where they don't even have somebody in the backfield. And maybe they'll rotate, they'll motion somebody in. Maybe they're going to throw from the empty set. And the personnel grouping is 11, but they're not playing. When you say 11, I think fans say, well, that means they have, three receivers, one tight end, one running back. But they're not playing like that on a particular play. Kenny Gainwell's playing wide receiver, for instance, does that a lot. They're not going to target him, but they're trying to open up space for the other players. So, a lot of it is just labeling of the players on the field as opposed to what they're actually doing. But as far as the play calling, look, I think it's a bigger issue than other people make, because I think it's a feel. And Brian Johnson, when I asked him that, basically said that there's a science to it, but there's also an art part to it, is what he said. And that's where Shane Steichen was really good at it. He was great at the callbacks. He would set teams up. He would run something, like I said, he'd run something maybe from an empty set in the first half, and he'd do it again, and it would be the same play. And then you would have defenders going, oh, they're going to run this. And same look, but he ran a different play. Most notable example of that would be Zach Pascal's touchdown. I could say that because people remember it, because he only had one touchdown, I believe. Right. That was a perfect example of the callback. Look, they're saying, oh, Zach Pascal, we saw this play. He's going to block.
You're going to be blocking, yep.
Yeah, and he's wide open. Nobody's near him. And that's the kind of stuff that Shane did really well. The most notable example of it not working was against the Saints. And that had more to do with the quarterback, to be honest. It was Gardner Minshew. And you could see, if you watch that play back, the Marcus Lattimore touchdown. Very smart, very savvy player, Marcus Lattimore. He saw it. He saw what was coming. He was calling out what was coming. And Gardner was supposed to see that and move off it. He didn't. And all of a sudden, it's a pick six going the other way. So sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But overall, I think Shane was really good at it.
And one of the reasons why I asked this question, and we're going to be joined by Scott Grayson from Fox 29 here in just a second. Relationships. not only is we know the relationship between the new play caller and the quarterback is a strong one because they've known each other forever, and we don't question that they'll be on the same page quite often during the year. Nobody's ever on the Shane and Hurts in his greatest season as he had last year weren't on the same page every single play call, but we have belief that it won't be a problem between the offense coordinator and the quarterback this year. But between the play caller and all his positional coaches, their relationship and their meeting of the minds is also very important. And it's a roll of the dice going into the season because these coaches have never been in those roles before working with each other. We shall see. All right, working with John McMullen every day, easy for me, Jody McDonald, here on Birds 365, and we try and sneak in a couple of good guests for you every single day. We hope we've achieved that today. Joining us next, Scott Grayson from Fox 29 here on Birds 360.